"I have learned more than you can imagine," I replied, my tone steadier than I felt. "These documents reveal everything, the hidden accounts, the underhanded deals, and now, my birth. I trusted you, Isabella. I believed you cared for me." My voice faltered as the weight of betrayal crashed over me. Why was I never allowed the truth? Her smile was as enigmatic as the portrait in the study. "Some truths, dear Sophia, are too volatile for even the purest of hearts. You were never meant to question the tapestry of our lives. You were woven into it precisely because you served a purpose." Her words, both gentle and cutting, echoed off the stone walls. "Your entire existence was engineered for a purpose that transcends maternal affection or simple revenge." Please join me in listening to the audio story. In the grand drawing room, I found them assembled like marionettes in a grim performance. My grandfather, Leonardo Rossi, sat in an antique leather armchair, his steely gaze appraising me as if I were both a prodigal daughter and a potential threat. The imposing lines of his face were softened only by the meticulously pressed suit. He wore a silent testament to power and authority that had governed this family for generations. His presence was both comforting and chilling. I could sense the cold calculation behind his measured words. Aunt Isabella moved gracefully in the periphery, her every gesture laced with that disarming blend of concern and covert ambition. She greeted me with a smile that never quite reached her eyes, a smile that hinted at hidden agendas and secrets best left undisturbed. Her embrace was a delicate dance one, where genuine affection intermingled with the unspoken promise of ulterior motives. And then there was Marco Rossi, my cousin, the legitimate heir whose charm and ambition were as enticing as they were dangerous. His eyes sparkled with a mix of mischief and malice. We exchanged curt greetings, our words wrapped in layers of personal history and rivalry that stretched far beyond mere bloodlines. In the quiet corners of the foyer, Luigi, the longtime butler whose stoic presence had witnessed more secrets than any living soul, observed me with eyes that seemed to see right through my carefully constructed veneer. His slight nod and quiet, "Welcome back, Miss Rossi," carried the weight of unsaid truths. It was as if he knew that my return was not just a journey back to an ancestral estate. It was the beginning of an intricate game where every smile concealed a dagger and every whispered word was a clue. That night, as darkness consolidated into an inky blanket over the villa, I retired to the guest room reserved for me. The room was adorned with delicate Venetian lace curtains and antique portraits whose painted eyes followed my every move, a silent reminder of the family's illustrious past and its lurking shadows. I set my suitcase by the heavy oak wardrobe and with a measured breath sank into the plush armchair beside a small marble fireplace. The flickering flames danced on the walls, casting trembling shadows that merged with memories of a mother I had lost and a secret I had fought so hard to bury. No sooner had I begun to unravel the thoughts of my past than a subtle disturbance interrupted my contemplation. A soft knock echoed from the door, a hesitant sound that seemed accidental in its gentleness. I opened the door to find no one, only a small envelope resting on the polished floor. The envelope was unmarked, its creamy paper as enigmatic as the secrets it threatened to divulge. My heart pounded as I broke the seal. The letter was succinct, its handwritten words both poetic and menacing. In the halls where echoes linger, the truth is as elusive as memory. Beware what you uncover, for even the purest of hearts can harbor the darkest of secrets. That single message sent a shiver racing along my spine. Here in the solitude of my restored dormitory, the past beckoned a past that whispered not only of my mother's demise, but also of the secrets I had so fiercely guarded. I knew that behind the veneer of familial loyalty, there lay treachery waiting to be unearthed, a treachery that could shatter the very foundations of our legacy. The following morning began with a palpable tension. I strolled along the manicured gardens, the dew still clinging to the lush greenery, my senses heightened as if the villa itself were conspiring with me. The air was cold and crisp, carrying a foreboding calm that imbued every step with the promise of danger. I allowed my mind to wander to the hidden recesses of the villa, those forgotten rooms and secret passages that had once been the playgrounds of my childhood mischief and the stages for whispered conspiracies. During a discreet conversation with Luigi in the hushed corridors behind the dining hall, I sought more clues about the recent disturbances. His lined face softened momentarily as he murmured, "Miss Rossi, there have been whispers in the staff quarters, strange noises in the dead of night, as if the walls are speaking." His voice, laden with both concern and resignation, suggested that even those who tirelessly served the Rossi family were not immune to its cursed legacy. I pressed for details, but his lips only curved into a knowing half-smile, as if he were guarding a truth too dangerous to fully reveal. Later that day, the grand dining hall filled with the clink of fine china and the murmur of subdued conversation as the family gathered for an afternoon meal. I took my seat at the head of the table, placed delicately between the cold gaze of my grandfather and the calculating smile of Aunt Isabella. Marco's glance lingered on me, a silent exchange of unspoken rivalry. The festive exterior of the meal, the meticulously arranged dishes, the sparkling crystal glasses only heightened my awareness of the darker undercurrents at play. Every morsel of food felt like a deceptive indulgence, a reminder that beneath the polished surfaces of even the grandest feasts, ruin could be lurking. Throughout the meal, conversations meandered between banal updates on fashion empires and subtle interrogations of one another's past actions. My grandfather's voice was measured as he praised the family's tradition of excellence, yet each word dripped with an undercurrent of dominance and old grudges. Aunt Isabella casually mentioned recent investments in international art, a remark that might have been innocent if not for the icy glint in her eyes. Marco's light-hearted banter was spiked with a tension I couldn't ignore. His flirtatious tone belied the razor-edge competition that wove through every interaction. Even Luigi, quiet and unobtrusive at the edge of the conversation, made intermittent glances toward me, as if urging me to watch, to listen, to decipher the coded language of our shared history. I found myself silently dissecting every word and gesture, searching for hints that would lead me closer to the truth behind my mother's death. The questions piled up relentlessly in my mind. Which smile concealed deceit? Which gesture hinted at a burden too heavy to bear? And most haunting of all, what was it that I, too, was hiding a secret so dark that it threatened to unravel the path of retribution I had so carefully charted? The recollection of my mother's warm, loving smile, now permanently shattered by loss, mingled with the bitter tang of revenge. I recalled long nights spent poring over faded letters and cryptic diary entries, each clue suggesting that the veneer of respectability was nothing more than an elaborate ruse. As evening descended, I sought refuge in a secluded alcove behind a row of ancient cypress trees on the villa's edge. The fading light caught fragments of my reflection in a small, tarnished mirror, leaning against the stone wall, eyes brimming with calculated resolve, yet shadowed by memories that whispered of pain and regret. In that quiet solitude, I allowed my thoughts to drift between the past and the present. I considered how every encounter with my patriarchal nemesis, the ever-watchful but ever-mysterious Luigi, the duplicitous smiles of my aunt, and even the charming facade of my cousin, was a piece in the intricate puzzle of retribution. Each piece brought me closer to understanding the tangled roots of betrayal that had defined our family legacy. The villa, with its labyrinthine corridors and hushed rooms, was a living organism, each creak and murmur a reminder that secrets have a way of surfacing when least expected. I resolved then and there that I would navigate these hidden passages not just in search of evidence regarding my mother's tragic end, but also to confront the inner demons that had long haunted me. The anonymous letter had ignited a spark of urgency within me, a desperate need to unmask the conspiracies festering behind every shadow and every whispered conversation. I made a silent pledge I would strip away the refined armor of our noble lineage to expose the rot at its core, even if it meant confronting truths that might condemn me as much as they would bring justice to a lost past. Returning to the villa's heart, where the opulent decor belied the turbulent undercurrents, I felt an exhilarating mix of dread and determination. I was acutely aware that my return might also mark a turning point for the Rossi family, one that would force each of us to reconcile with the sins of our past. The threads of fate were already pulling taut around us, and I sensed that in the coming hours, every conversation, every furtive glance, and every hushed silence would unravel another layer of our carefully guarded facade. Standing in the entryway of the family's private library, a room filled with towering shelves of leather-bound tomes and secrets too dangerous for public consumption, I took a deep breath. The soft lamplight played across the spines of ancient books, each title a silent testament to the generations that had come before. It was here among these relics of history that I felt the most vulnerable, most exposed. I was a scar upon this venerable lineage here, not solely to avenge my mother's untimely death, but to rewrite the narrative of betrayal that had long haunted the Rossi name. I could already feel the imminent collision between the polished charm of our lives and the raw, unbridled truth hidden in our memories. In that solemn moment, as I traced a trembling finger along the embossed cover of a weathered diary, I knew that my path was set. I would peel away every layer of cordiality and deceit, even if that journey led me to confront a darkness that I had long tried to bury deep within myself. Thus began my renewed crusade for justice, a quest laden not only with the promise of revenge, but with the possibility of redefining who I truly was. Every step I took along the marble corridors, every whispered conversation behind closed doors, and every hesitant glance in my direction wove a tapestry of intrigue and inevitable reckoning. I sensed that somewhere amidst the lavish parties, the aristocratic pretenses, and the closely guarded secrets, the key to my mother's demise, and perhaps the key to my own salvation, lay hidden, waiting for the precise moment to be revealed. And so as dusk settled over the villa and the first tendrils of night unfurled their inky embrace, I steeled myself for the challenges ahead. With each breath, I welcomed the pain, the passion, and the uncertainty. For in this world of gilded deceit, only by daring to confront the darkest recesses of my past could I hope to reclaim the truth, and perhaps in doing so, finally set my tormented soul free. The next morning, the promise of a new day did little to dispel the oppressive tension that haunted the Rossi villa. Every surface, every gleaming chandelier, every carved wood panel in the hallways seemed to pulse with quiet malice. I moved cautiously, my mind racing as I planned my next steps. The anonymous note from the night before was no mere warning. It was a summons to unearth the derelict secrets that had plagued my life. Determined, I set off down a narrow corridor that I'd long suspected concealed passages and hidden rooms, a maze designed to protect the family's darkest truths. I reached a secluded door, partially masked by an aged tapestry of mythic beasts and ethereal faces. It was a door I had glimpsed in fleeting moments during my childhood, a door to what the family whispered of only in hushed tones. My pulse quickened as I pressed my trembling hand against the cool, carved wood. After a few measured breaths, I pushed the door open, stepping into a dim study that reeked of antique leather dust and secrets. The rich aroma of old paper and ink mingled with a palpable sense of foreboding. Here I suspected lay the answers to the questions that had haunted me since my mother's untimely death. In the center of the room, behind a portrait of my late grandmother, a stern-faced matriarch, whose eyes seemed to follow every intruder, I noticed a concealed safe embedded into the wall. The safe's presence was as incongruous as it was sinister, its metallic glimmer hinting at treasures not of gold, but of damning truths. The safe was locked with a combination that I hoped my careful recollections would unlock. I recalled fragments of idle conversation from holiday gatherings, the small offhand references to the secrets kept safe, whispered by my grandfather in moments of rare vulnerability. Using those clues as keys, I worked the dial slowly, each click sending ripples of anxious anticipation through me, until finally the lock yielded with an almost inaudible sigh. Inside, I unearthed a thick file of documents, diaries, and yellowed letters that chronicled decades of clandestine dealings. My fingers trembled as I sifted through them. There were ledgers detailing suspicious financial transfers, cryptic notes that alluded to covert affairs, and a personal diary belonging to my mother. I devoured every word, each sentence painting a picture of a family empire built not solely on glamour and tradition, but on whispered betrayals and carefully concealed misdeeds. In the margins of my mother's diary, I noticed several cryptic annotations referring to the unspoken truth of Sophia's birth. At first, I brushed them aside as the ramblings of a heartbroken soul, but something urged me to examine them further. And then, nestled in a faded envelope marked with an insignia long forgotten, I found it a birth certificate that shattered the very foundation of everything I believed. The document bore the elegant script of a time when honor still mattered, yet its contents were a cruel revelation. The details clearly contradicted the family's cherished narrative. I learned that I was not the biological daughter of Elena Rossi as everyone had presumed. Instead, I was the result of a clandestine and carefully orchestrated decision, a secret engineered to secure not just an heir, but an instrument for revenge. The realization hit me like a sudden gust, a devastating, bone-deep truth that unmoored me from the identity I had so fiercely clung to. I was not the child I thought I was, but a pawn in a game played by powers much darker than personal vendettas. Before I could fully absorb this revelation, a soft creak echoed from the doorway. I froze, my heart pounding in my ears. From the half-light, Aunt Isabella emerged, her posture regal, her eyes glinting with a mixture of pity and unspoken triumph. "I wondered when you'd muster the courage to seek the truth," she said with a delicate, almost mocking tone. Her voice was as silky as it was dangerous, and every word dripped with a calculated confidence. "I have learned more than you can imagine," I replied, my tone steadier than I felt. "These documents reveal everything, the hidden accounts, the underhanded deals, and now, my birth. I trusted you, Isabella. I believed you cared for me." My voice faltered as the weight of betrayal crashed over me. Why was I never allowed the truth? Her smile was as enigmatic as the portrait in the study. "Some truths, dear Sophia, are too volatile for even the purest of hearts. You were never meant to question the tapestry of our lives. You were woven into it precisely because you served a purpose." Her words, both gentle and cutting, echoed off the stone walls. "Your entire existence was engineered for a purpose that transcends maternal affection or simple revenge." Anger churned within me as I advanced toward her. I came back for justice for my mother, and now I see that I was a mere instrument in an even grander scheme. My hand gripped the file tightly, the edges of the documents biting into my palm. "You lied to me. All of you lied." Before she could retreat into the shadows of her calm veneer, a sudden crash resounded outside the study. Our conversation halted mid-bite as the sound of hurried footsteps and panicked whispers spilled beneath the door. I felt an inexplicable chill, a premonition of chaos, and exchanged a glance with Isabella. For an instant, our mutual animosity receded, replaced by the instinctive dread that something irreversible was about to occur. I rushed to the door and cautiously opened it, peering into the corridor. There, in the weak light of a corridor lamp, stood Marco, his face ashen and eyes wide with disbelief. Behind him, a man I recognized from countless family gatherings lay motionless, a man whose unexpected appearance in our midst was as startling as his sudden demise. His lifeless form sprawled across the cold marble floor confirmed the escalating madness. Someone had silenced a witness, one who perhaps knew too much. Shaken, I retreated back into the study where Isabella's gaze bore into me relentlessly. "It appears that our family's secrets have already exacted their toll," she murmured, her tone now oddly melancholic. "There is no turning back once the web is fully revealed." My mind reeled as the implications of both revelations collided in a maelstrom of disgust and sorrow. The documents in my hands testified that my mother was embroiled in dark alliances. Her death, I now understood, was not a random act of cruelty, but a calculated move in a game of power and deceit. And as if that weren't enough, the revelation of my own contrived identity cut deeper than any wound. I was not just returning for vengeance. I was now a woman reborn in a crucible of lies, forced to confront the monstrous architecture of my past. "Who are you, Isabella?" I demanded, my voice trembling with ferocity. "If all of this was engineered, then what becomes of me, of us, the family we vowed to protect?" Her eyes flickered with a resigned sadness as she stepped closer, her presence as disarming as it was authoritative. "You are both my greatest triumph and my most enduring curse," she whispered. "The Rossi legacy was at stake, and you were the unforeseen variable. The truth is, our dear patriarch Leonardo arranged everything your inception, your path, so that you would be the perfect instrument for his designs. But ideas evolve, and what was once meant for retribution may now serve a higher purpose." My heart pounded in disbelief. The notion that grandfather Leonardo could have manipulated my very existence in his eternal quest for control was a horror too immense to fathom. I staggered back, the file slipping from my grasp as I choked on incredulity. "So you mean—" "I am nothing more than a creation, a tool to further your ambitions." Isabella's gaze hardened. "Don't mistake destiny for mere convenience, Sophia. You are the culmination of our choices, our sins, and our desperate need for reparation, a living embodiment of both our redemption and our damnation." In that moment, I understood that I had been orchestrating my own revenge before I even set foot in this cursed villa. Every calculated step, every moment of self-doubt, every act of defiance was part of a larger, unbearable puzzle, a tapestry in which I had unwittingly played every role. The conversation was abruptly severed by a tremor that rushed through the ancient building. The lights flickered, and a distant rumble suggested that the very walls of the Rossi estate were about to collapse under the weight of their collective guilt. I felt the collision of fate and necessity, the urge to expose the truth, versus the fear of losing myself entirely in the process. In that pivotal moment, Marco reappeared in the doorway, his expression transforming from grief to a steely resolve. Enough, he declared in a tone filled with both authority and anguish. This cycle of betrayal must end no matter the cost. His arrival seemed to jolt everyone into a rare collective clarity, a fragile understanding that our intertwined destinies were reaching the brink of irrevocable change. I turned to face him, my emotions surging turbulently. "Marco, why now? Are you finally tired of playing your part in this charade?" I demanded, the sting of our mutual rivalry cutting through my measured resolve. His eyes, so familiar, yet now devoid of the usual flirtatious spark, betrayed a sorrow deeper than any I had known. I was until I learned the truth about us all. Our lives have been built on secrets and lies, and the moment has come to embrace them, rather than be consumed by them. His voice, though low, resonated with the gravity of someone who had suffered long enough. "But know this, I never intended to hurt you. I only ever wanted what was best for the family, even if that meant sacrificing my own happiness." Silence enveloped us, heavy and charged with unspoken confessions. While Marco's words offered a glimmer of understanding, my mind was a tumult of revelations and broken trust. I clutched the incriminating documents as if they were the only tether to a reality I was desperately trying to reshape. Suddenly, the oppressive stillness was shattered by the sound of shattering glass, a crash that echoed from the corridor behind us. A part of me instinctively knew that the relentless march of retribution could no longer be stalled. With a bitter smile tinged by both regret and resolve, I realized that the path forward was fraught with peril, but it was mine to choose. Drawing a deep, steadying breath, I summoned every ounce of courage as I stepped forward into the mounting chaos. I refused to be a puppet in this charade any longer. I declared, my voice unwavering despite the storm of emotions inside me. "I will expose every lie, every secret, no matter how painful. The righteousness of my mother's memory, and now my own, demands nothing less." Isabella's watery eyes shimmered with a mix of admiration and horror. "Then be prepared, dear Sophia. For once the truth is unleashed, there is no going back." Her words, half warning, half benediction, echoed in my ears as I lifted the file high, a symbol of my unyielding resolve. In that moment, the villa's dark corridors seemed to possess a life of their own, whispering, shuddering with suppressed agony, urging the culmination of a drama that had stretched across generations. I knew that my journey had irrevocably intertwined me with the sins of the Rossi legacy, and while I had once come seeking simple revenge, I now found myself at the crossroads of destiny, facing a truth far more harrowing than any sanctioned act of retribution. As I stepped out of the study and into the swirling uncertainty of the night, the fragments of the past swirled around me like ghostly apparitions, a tapestry of broken promises and clandestine acts. The weight of my manufactured lineage pressed upon me, but with it came a bitter liberation. I was not merely the grieving daughter of a fallen woman. I was the product of an intricate labyrinth of ambition and betrayal. And in that realization, I recognized that justice would demand sacrifices beyond my comprehension. Every step I took down the long, winding corridor was a step into an unknown future, a future that promised no absolution, only the unrelenting pursuit of truth and the heavy cost of reclaiming one's identity. I knew that the battle for the soul of the Rossi family was only beginning, and that in the end, the scars we bore would serve as a testament to the price of secrets and shame. The night had grown colder, and as I melted into its inky depths, I vowed to unmask every hidden sin of this crumbling empire, even if it meant shattering every fragment of the life I once imagined. The truth, monstrous and unyielding, beckoned me onward, a relentless call that demanded I confront not only the ghosts of my family, but also the darkness that dwelled in the recesses of my own heart. And so I walked on, embracing the duality of my existence, the avenger and the pawn, the victim and the architect of my own fate. The journey ahead was uncertain, yet every step was imbued with the fierce determination to let the secrets of the past light the way to a future, unburdened by deceit and regret. I awoke before dawn to the sound of my own heartbeat, an erratic drum underscoring the chaos that had become my life. The Rossi villa, still trembling from last night's revelations, loomed silently against a bruised sky. I had barely escaped the confrontation with Isabella and Marco, yet every step I took toward the truth was now irrevocably entangled with a darker, more personal secret. With trembling hands and a mind swirling with guilt and determination, I retraced my steps through the twisting corridors of the estate, intent on uncovering the final pieces of evidence that would explain my mother's untimely death, and by extension, the monstrous destiny that had been imposed upon me. Stumbling upon a forgotten hallway behind a heavy, time-worn tapestry, I discovered a narrow, hidden passage. Its walls were lined with dusty portraits and faded insignias relics from an era when honor seemed attainable. At the far end of the corridor, behind a battered wooden door, I found a modest study illuminated by the weak glow of a single oil lamp. There, on an imposing oak desk, lay a sealed envelope bearing the delicate handwriting of my mother. Heart-pounding, I broke the seal and unfolded the letter. In a careful script that defied time, she revealed her final confession. Her life had spiraled into a vortex of secrets and betrayals, and she had discovered fatal irregularities within our family empire. She had learned of illegal dealings of underhand alliances that endangered not only our fortunes, but our very souls. The letter detailed her plan to expose this rot, yet it also bore a chilling admission her life was threatened and she trusted no one enough to intervene. As I read her words, my vision blurred with tears I refused to acknowledge. With each line, the horrors of a life lived in quiet desperation rose to the surface. But the heart of her letter, and the key to understanding my own fractured identity, came in its final haunting lines. My dearest Sophia, if you are reading these words, then fate has led you to the truth. Know that my death was not the act of fate, but the calculated result of a betrayal that runs deeper than blood. Trust not the faces that smile in your presence. Among them lies the one most unworthy, a betrayal wrought by love turned to ambition. And know this, your birth was no accident. You were forged from our collective sins, the hidden price of a legacy built on deceit. I folded the letter carefully, its words igniting in me a conflagration of sorrow and revulsion. I had known that I was not my mother's biological child, a revelation delivered to me by clandestine documents, but now the letter confirmed that my very existence was engineered to serve a purpose that I had never agreed to. A purpose intertwined with revenge ambition and a fate as cold and calculated as the marble floors beneath my feet. Before I could fully absorb the weight of her words, I heard murmuring footsteps echo along the corridor. I concealed the letter beneath my coat and slipped silently along the passage following the sound until I reached a modest chamber adjoining a forgotten pantry. There I found Grandfather Leonardo, leaning heavily over a ledger, his lined face twisted in an expression of quiet agony mixed with simmering rage. "So you've come to discover everything," he rasped without turning. His voice was as frail as the parchment in my hand, yet there was an unmistakable menace lurking beneath. I squared my shoulders. "Grandfather, the truth, my mother's truth is right here," I said, my voice steadier than I felt inside. I pulled the letter from its hiding place and held it before him like a dying ember. "You engineered everything. My life, my fate, and her death. How could you use me as a pawn in this endless cycle of vengeance?" Leonardo's eyes, once as cold and unyielding as carved marble, softened for a moment with grief. "Sophia, you must understand that our family is built upon sacrifices. I did what I thought necessary to preserve our legacy, even if it meant compromising my soul." His words were a bitter confession, yet I sensed layers of manipulation and regret intertwined like thorns in his speech. Before I could press him further, a low moan drifted from somewhere deep in the mansion, a sound I recognized from that fateful night when a man lay dead in the corridor. My breath caught. That silent witness whose lifeless face had seemed to accuse everyone gathered here was not the only casualty in our tapestry of lies. And suddenly, in the depths of my conscience, an even darker memory stirred. I recalled a clandestine meeting in a secluded wine cellar months ago, a night shrouded in bitter determination. In hushed tones and under the heavy scent of aged oak and spilled wine, I had made a decision I had long buried beneath my quest for retribution. I remembered the furtive exchange, a promise made to silence a man who had threatened to expose secrets that could unravel the Rossi empire. I recalled how my hands had trembled as I administered the poison that would ensure his silence forever. At that moment, the terrible realization struck me like a thunderbolt. I was not merely a victim seeking justice, I was complicit in the cycle of betrayal and bloodshed that had defined our family for generations. Leonardo's gaze fell away in horror as if he could sense the dark secret clawing its way to the surface of my soul. What did you do?" He whispered, each word heavy with disbelief and dread. I closed my eyes tightly as if to shut away that part of me. I silenced him, I admitted, in a voice barely above a whisper. I became the instrument of his demise, as I have become of our family's downfall. I thought I was avenging my mother, but in truth, I was feeding the same corruption that destroyed her. At that moment, Marco's footsteps echoed in the corridor. He entered with a conflicted look, a mix of remorse and defiance. His voice trembled as he spoke. "Sophia, I never intended for things to spiral so far out of control. I ordered her death because she threatened to expose secrets that would ruin us all. I did it under duress for the sake of the family." His eyes, wide with regret, met mine, but I never imagined that the cycle of revenge would claim another innocent soul. The room fell into a heavy silence as the three of us, descendants of a once proud lineage, now ravaged by ambition and treachery, stood at the crossroads of our collective sins. I felt the full weight of those sins pressing down on my heart with an intensity that threatened to make me collapse. In that murky hour, I saw the truth for what it was, not a simple tale of revenge for a lost mother, but a tragic spiral in which all of us had played our parts and in which I had become both the avenger and the architect of my own ruin. Fear and sorrow intermingled within me as I stared into the haunted eyes of my grandfather and the burdened gaze of my cousin. I realized that the legacy of the Rossi family was not destined to remain mired in endless cycles of bloodshed and betrayal unless someone took a stand. I could feel destiny's cruel fingers guiding me, demanding that I choose between embracing the monstrous path I had unwittingly set upon or shattering the chains of retribution once and for all. Struggling to rise above the tidal pull of my own guilt, I found the resolve to speak. I not let our past define us further. My mother's memory cries out not for continued revenge, but for a chance at redemption, for a chance to expose our sins to the world so that justice might finally be done. My voice, though wavering, carried a tone of quiet determination that resonated in the still air. Leonardo's face was a mask of conflicting emotions, a sorrowful recognition of his own role, and a bitter acceptance of the inevitable truth. "And what of your own sins? Sophia, can you ever hope for forgiveness when you have become as ruthless as those you despise?" He challenged, his tone both accusatory and mournful. I inhaled deeply the weight of my own transgressions and a bitter taste on my tongue. I know I have sinned and I carry that darkness within me, but exposing who we are, our corruption and our lies, might offer a sliver of hope for all of us. I will turn these documents, these words, and every secret hidden in these walls over to those who can hold us accountable. Just then, the villa shuddered as if protesting our confessions. The grand structure trembled under the burden of decades of unspoken crimes. A thunderous crash of falling masonry echoed through the hall, and in that violent moment, I realized that our house of cards was collapsing. Marco raced to the door, his face stricken with terror, while Leonardo staggered backward, his once iron resolve cracking visibly under the strain of our revelations. In the ensuing bedlam, I made a choice that would forever redefine my fate. Clutching the evidence of our accumulated sins tight to my chest, I bolted toward the front entrance. My heart pounded as I burst through the heavy doors into the chill pre-dawn air. Behind me, I could hear the tumult of voices, the shouts of disbelief from those who remained trapped within the ancient walls of the Rossi villa. The drive away was a blur of rain-slicked roads and a mind that churned with conflicting emotions. Every mile further from that accursed estate felt like an attempt to separate myself from the bloodshed and betrayal, yet I knew that I carried the stains of those deeds with me. The evidence lay securely packaged in an unmarked envelope on the seat beside me, a testament to a legacy of cruelty that might finally receive its reckoning in the eyes of the world. I gripped the steering wheel as if it were a lifeline, my eyes fixed on the dark road receding behind me. "I will atone for what I have done," I whispered into the silence, my voice both a promise and a plea. "That my sins may be washed away by the truth, and that someday justice will rise from the rubble of our shattered legacy." Standing there at the crossroads of my past and the unknown future, I realized that the cycle of revenge and betrayal would continue to haunt each generation unless someone dared to break its hold. With the evidence secure in my hands and the first rays of the sun cresting the distant hills, I drove onward into a future where justice, forgiveness, and revenge would forever be intertwined, and where my final choice might light the way to a new beginning or plunge us all into ever-deepening darkness.